All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First, a motion for approval of the minutes from the prior meeting. Lynn, a second to the motion.
Somebody else had to read.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, cool. All right, on correspondence, we have four members excused tonight: Kevin Roberts, Steve Rinaldi, Steve Retzloff, and Nash Alexander. We have one disciplinary action to be read into the record. It is the Berlin Volunteer Fire Company in Berlin, New York, which received a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of Article 30, Section 3005. You have in the agenda for the meeting course applications. There are three of them for information only: an EMT original sponsored by Remsco County, an EMT original in Saratoga, an EMT refresher in Saratoga, all that will begin this summer and fall. Any questions on the course applications? Okay.
Sorry, as I had mentioned inside, I believe we also have an excused absence from Emily Cross.
And we have an excused absence from Emery Cross. Thank you, Doc.
And Skip Marion? Skip, he was,
Skip has PT. I expected him for this meeting. He said he may miss exec board, but he was going to try to make this, so he may still walk in.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. That's all the correspondence we have, so we go right into our committee reports. CON committee.
No activity this month.
Nothing this month. That's 2 in a row. Okay. So report of the executive committee. We'll discuss everything that was discussed in executive committee throughout the committee reports here, and there's nothing else from that committee. Tim, executive director's report.
Hopefully everybody has a copy. Our regional award applications went into DOH, met the deadline handily. I hand-delivered them, and I'll defer once again to Steve to make an announcement about that maybe later in the meeting. Met with some representatives from ARMS about a month ago to discuss operations. My intent was to meet with Mountain Lakes also, though they were unavailable. A pretty productive meeting, and they took particular interest this time around in our GPO offering or initiative. So the reps from Mohawk will be up there in September to address the ARMS folks on that. Rest of the stuff is basically self-explanatory. I'll let Doc Daly talk about maybe some of the AIDS Institute stuff and maybe some of the image trend stuff. And that's basically it, unless somebody has a question for me.
Hey, Tim, I noticed in your report you got listed a lot of different classes that are sponsored by the region. I think that we're becoming a pretty big training center. Would it be possible that maybe in some point you were able to give the council a report on how many students are coming through in total each semester and totals? Because I think that the size of our classes is growing. And
Sure.
I think it's just nice as it shows Remo doing a lot when you see a lot of more students coming through.
Well, absolutely, and I could do that in September. I have to send the state DOH budget in relative to
Right.
training anyway, so I'll have those numbers for you. I can have them
That'd be really,
September.
I think that'd be show impressive work by you and the instructors. Okay, thank you. Okay, Rich is not here to give the treasurer's report, but I think I can paraphrase that that you have the actual treasurer's report. Our receivables are extremely low, and that our cash is doing well. We have total assets of $611,300. We're caught up on all the payments that are due for us. There are no bills for payment tonight, and there are no financial irregularities. So, any questions on the treasurer's report? Okay. On the GPO Finance Committee, the one thing Tim already mentioned is that we've got some interest from the other regions, and our GPO sales rep will be attending their next regional council meeting to talk about the opportunities to work with Mohawk Hospital Supply. Medical Director, Medical Advisory, and Academic Committee, Dr. Daly.
We'll start with Academic and Medical Advisory Committee. First, we had a clarification of the CME program. There was some question as to whether or not hours spent taking advanced cardiac life support and a pediatric course would count towards the 24 hours of continuing medical education required. Clarified that indeed ACLS and a primary pediatric course do not qualify for part of the 24 hours. On the other hand, if you take a secondary course in pediatrics, that certainly does. So we welcome people getting more education in whatever areas they believe they need the most work in. We want our providers to feel as educated as possible. And continuing medical education should be continuing medical education, learning more, advancing more, pushing this profession as far as we can. It's why we can do so well with the protocols, and frankly, it's why we've got such good providers in the region. Other things of particular note, there is a committee that's been established to start looking at the issues of transitioning our intermediates towards a new advanced standard, see what that's going to affect in the region and with our training programs, as well as the agencies themselves, and that's going to start doing some work. The NIOSH survey, which Rich mentioned last time, anthropomorphic testing of EMS providers, which is a fascinating idea. We have heard no additional information from them, but both the MAC and the academic committee thought it was a great idea for us to participate in that program. Certainly anything that we can do to make life in the back and front of an ambulance safer for our EMS providers and more real for our EMS providers makes a lot of sense. 70-kilo crash test dummies do not represent the average EMS provider. There was a lot of work done by Dr. Funk talking about the specialty care transport program that Mohawk is doing, and just some updates to that. And LifeNet also came to us. This was the Dr. Funk show at the Medical Advisory Committee meeting this time, with a presentation about TXA, or tranexamic acid. I pronounce that wrong every time, I'm sorry. I'll find you a spelling. TXA is the easy way to spell it. Basically, it seems to be a remarkably inexpensive medication that is used more in trauma patients in theater right now. It's being used in Britain and some other places. The jury's still out in this country, but the trauma service at Albany Med is interested in starting to use it. LifeNet will begin using that in the field. It seems to reduce all-cause mortality for hemorrhagic shock patients, probably in the neighborhood of 2% or so, maybe a little bit more. Interestingly, it's something that seems to cause clotting, but it causes clotting in the right places, so it doesn't cause an increase in strokes or MIs, which you'd expect. It's kind of bizarre. So. And it's stuff that's good for you. On a slightly different note, I'll use the board to explain a little bit more of this. Tim, Dean, and I talked a little bit with some folks from Image Trend. Image Trend is the company that currently runs what's called the State Bridge. As you know, in New York State, we have a lot of different electronic PCR companies, and what the state does is they man a single database that all of this information flows into. So that state bridge is here, and that state bridge is wiped of all identifying information for the patient. So all PHI, all right, is stripped from data before it goes into the state bridge, after it comes from an EMS agency in the field. If you think about it, if you ultimately are an investigator, that may not matter depending on what you're looking into, all right? The state bridge still contains the first letter of the last name, or the first letter of the last name, first letter of the first name, and the last four of the social. As we've said here before, the last four of the social is profoundly important. It shouldn't be just zeros or X's. It's profoundly important because this allows this EMS data to be married up ultimately with data that's part of the hospital discharge data set. So what should be able to happen in some magical computer database in the sky is the EMS run sheet, I'm not going to try to draw that, the EMS run sheet should be able to be married up at the state with the SPARCS, as they call it, discharge diagnosis, and we should be able to see that all of the patients with chest pain that were discharged with a diagnosis of ST elevation MI. All right, that should be able to be equated. Can't be if somebody says, oh, well, this is going to be all zeros, or something like that. So work with your agencies to put real information in there. That's important. However, because you can't get good, clean information out of there with all the data points we might be interested in, for example, a metric on time to pain medicine. There's a new mandate coming down the line that we are going to be mandated to give pain medicine within the first hour of arrival. Well, that's great. But we're off the hook on pain medicine within an hour of arrival if EMS gave pain medicine. So some hospitals will be interested in going back and looking for that PCR to find out whether or not that's indeed true. Because they'll want to make sure that they're hitting the metrics that they need to hit. We need to get stroke metrics, trauma metrics. We need to get metrics for pediatrics. We need to get metrics for pain. We need to get metrics for cardiac patients. And all of that information comes from here. What we met with ImageTrend about was to see whether or not there's a way for all EMS ePCR information to come here into a Remo bridge first. The Remo bridge wouldn't be stripped of information. So all of the information from the 60-something thousand calls that Mohawk transports would go directly into the Remo bridge, up into the state bridge with the PHI stripped on the way, completely seamlessly to anybody at Mohawk. It would not create mark kind of any aggravation whatsoever. All right? All of the information that goes into EMS charts would be able to go into the bridge, up into the state bridge, without any aggravation to Schenectady Fire in this unit. It would be completely seamless for anybody actually operating in the field. And really important, all the information that currently is contained in ESO's data set that's almost inaccessible to us would be uploaded into the Remo bridge, come on up here, and then be accessible to the hospitals. Because the hospitals would be able to get information out of here. And the region would be able to study information out of here. So when we start looking at data, we would be able to say, this is our time to pain medicine in the region. And it would be able to equate all the patients taken care of by Mohawk that got ALS from Mohawk, all of the patients that got ALS from the fire departments using EMS charts, all of the patients that were taken care of by Greene County paramedics using ESO, and all of the patients that are now being taken care of with some of the other more esoteric programs as well. This is something we started to explore. We'll see whether or not we get any more information on it. But the goal would ultimately be, can we get all of this disparate data in one place so it can be pulled down and used? Because data for data's sake, useless. Data, when it's someplace where we can all get reports out of it and begin to start using it, can make a profound difference ultimately for our patient care, for all of our hospitals, ultimately for funding streams, and hopefully just build a more robust system here. Did that a little more
So
clear?
this would not have the paper PCR data?
This would not have the paper PCR data. There currently is no easy way to get the paper PCR data. This may provide an opportunity for us to make an inexpensive ePCR, this basically true basic ePCR available to people. What that cost would be, we don't have a good idea yet. We'd have to wait and see what that comes down to. It won't change anything for the state. The state will still get the data exactly the way they currently do now. So it ultimately would be exactly what the state's looking to use to do this correlation with Sparks. And it would provide a more robust system here. This is already being done in Susquehanna with their 5 hospitals, and seems to be working really well for them. They have less people feeding into it. They have less electronic PCR data sets that they're trying to put into it there. But ImageTrend is a computer company that happens to manage medical data also. They're not a primary medical company. So managing huge databases is what they do for a living. And they're doing bridges
for 32 states right now. So this ain't their first rodeo. So we'll see what kind of additional information we can get from them along the way, and see if this is something that we may be able to use to put all this information together and start to really get some robust data. Among the things that we've done so far this year, looking at data that we can currently touch, we've looked at what's our time to pain management in the field. And we've seen that our time to pain management continues to drop. That the number of fentanyl utilizations is slightly increased now that we have standing orders, but not drastically increased. We can start to get that kind of information. That's the kind of thing that we need to know about all of our protocols. So when we sit here and we have a region-wide shortage of dopamine, we have to be able to know, can we actually use this stuff? Because right now, nobody can tell us without making 35 phone calls. And then people still have to guess. So we need to be able to get good data in order to manage all of these complex things that are changing so quickly in healthcare.
Thank you. You have any other reports on academic?
Only other
or-
report was that Tim and I sat down with the folks from the AIDS Institute and talked about the BLS naloxone program. That has been extremely well received by the state. State is continuing to support it, and we are continuing to look at the data coming back from it, but basically incredibly strong program, and the AIDS Institute is very thankful that Remo's put forth the leadership to run this for them, so it's working out really well.
Is there any impact of the New York State trauma system changes on the designation of trauma centers that will happen in our region that the council should be aware of?
What Steve's referring to is that New York State has always done things New York State's way and has designated our own trauma centers. Through doing that, we've then done site visits and have been making sure that all of the trauma centers in the state were compliant with the what we call 405 regs and the 708s. I think it was the 708 was trauma, right? I think so. The State Trauma Advisory Committee and ultimately the Commissioner of Health decided that New York State is really no different than any other state, and we are going to use the American College of Surgeons designations for trauma centers. Some of that's a positive thing, some of that's a difficult thing for the institutions. For our region itself at this point, Albany Med is our trauma center. Albany Med is actively pursuing ACS Level 1 designation, which would leave them in exactly the same place they have been before. There likely will be some level 2s. There may be a level 2. There certainly will be at least one new level 3 that I've heard rumor of. What that ultimately will mean to the trauma system itself, we'll have to investigate further once those things start to coalesce a little bit. But it's certainly leading to a lot more interest at the centers in the documentation coming from pre-hospital care. The ACS, the American College of Surgeons, is extremely interested in what happened pre-hospitally. They're firm in their belief that if you don't have the PCR data, you are trying to start reading a book with chapter 2. You need chapter 1 in order to be able to read a book. And because our PCR data is difficult to review, that's something else that adds into the timing of this, that actually makes this even more perfect. So we'll see where this stuff all goes to. Just to make sure that everybody in the room knows, the idea that it's extremely hard to get PCR data in hospitals is not unique to this region. There currently is a thread on the State Trauma Advisory Committee listserv with trauma coordinators statewide complaining about not being able to get data. Right? That's something that happens everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So even though Mohawk prints out those PCRs before they back out, doesn't mean we don't lose them. So hard to find data.
So when will this sort out? Will it be this year or longer?
Over the
than
next
that?
2 years.
So sometime in the next year, we probably should just have some sort of, find someone to give us a report?
As of
on
right
this?
now, we have plans to have the regional trauma coordinator Diane Abley will be coming to this, to the REMAC meeting in September to make a report about all-cause trauma, some mortality statistics, morbidity, how the transfer patterns are working from a regional perspective. And I'll bring whatever information there is from that. If it looks like something would be an interesting presentation for the group, I'll see whether or not I can get Diane to come
I
here.
think
as well.
that'd be, even it might be a shorter version, or something like that. Well, thank you, Dr. Daly.
You're welcome. One of the things that they always look at that's important is what transfer patterns look like. You know, if a whole lot of level 1 traumas are being transferred out of the community hospitals directly to us, that may be an EMS educational issue. It may also be that it was a stabilization issue. And that's why we need to be able to look back to that initial PCR and figure it out.
Thank you. All right. New York State EMS Council report. There are 3 things. The Vital Signs Conference is scheduled for October 24th through 27th this year. It will be in Buffalo. Second, the State EMS Council has been authorized to continue meeting. There was a small hiatus based on the availability of funding to pay for the meetings, but it'll be meeting in October and January. So we're back in business. The third issue is that the governor's office is holding a series of stakeholder meetings with all the involved parties over the consolidation of the regions. And that expressed interest seems to did not happen this year, but the governor has raised the ante, so to speak. So I would expect that this time next year, we may be having a discussion about legislation passing that will take us from 17 regions in the state down to a more compact number. Right now, they're talking about 10, but I'm sure there's a lot to play. And the last thing from State EMS Council is Tim reported we had submitted all of our awards for consideration. It's exciting to announce that Anne Marie Cross has been chosen by the State EMS Council as the Registered Nurse Professional of the Year. So she'll be receiving the statewide award based on the nomination of this region at the Vital Signs Conference. And I think she got a letter this week. We're going to try and surprise her tonight, but A, she's not here, and B, she already knows about it. So.
She does, by the way, say thank you very much.
Okay, so we have nothing for the membership committee, right? And nominating committee tonight. Len Awards Committee, I think, had nothing. And you know, PJ's not here for MCI Committee. And Jim, I don't think you had anything to report on that? Even though we have 2 major events going on, coming up, right? One in your county. You want to mention anything about that? Or?
Yeah, Remsco County is going to be having Country Fest. Planning is underway. There's a few more loose ends that I found out tonight that we need to look into. But I know that the Remo Mutual or MCI plan will be in my back pocket in case anything happens. And I think Camp Bisco is also in.
6, 7, 8. Same day. So is Camp Bisco the same weekend?
Yeah. Luckily, Country Fest is only one day.
Now, so Country Fest is here, right? And Camp Bisco's here,
Close by.
and Albany's right in the middle, right? So everyone from Albany County.
Equidistant from Albany Met.
Equidistant
from Albany Met.
That's all right.
From, yes.
All right, so, well, thank you. All right, county reports, Albany County.
Nothing to report.
Olympia. Green,
We set our education schedule for the next year.
Rensselaer, other than that?
We do have a new EMS4, which is in charge of QA or QI, and that's Skip Bibernick. The official appointment has not been made yet, but I'm expecting that by the end of the week. Other than that, that's all I got.
Saratoga? Schenectady?
No report.
No report. Okay, we have one motion to read into the record. That was a vote that was done over the telephone and rather email, and that was the course sponsorship renewal for Greene County EMS, and that was passed by 22 yes and 1 abstention. Now, Tim, I accidentally went over the QI report. Was that just in the executive committee?
Everybody has a copy here. Dean
Okay.
submitted an update on some of the QI stuff that's been going on in the last month or two, so everybody should have a copy. If you don't, they're on the table.
All right, so QI committee report talks about their work in cardiac arrest, pain management, Gesundheit, medication administration, Gesundheit. And I think we've invited Dr. McHugh to come in September to give us an update on what's happening in QI, and if there's anything that the council can do to assist him in taking it to the next level. All right, we have one seconded motion that's coming forward, actually two motions coming forward from under new business. The first one is that the tables that we're sitting at have reached their useful lifespan, and it appears a number of them have failed under use.
3 in the last 3 weeks, 2 are down there, 1 already made it to the dumpster.
So
The legs are snapping.
the executive committee has brings forward a seconded motion to authorize the executive director to spend up to $3,000 on the purchase of new tables for the room. So is there any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Bruce.
Is that going to be enough? We bought some and tables are really expensive. Is that going to cover what you need? Have you priced it out? Do we need to bump it up a little?
I think it's
for
going.
me,
I
that's
think it's
undoable.
going to be enough.
Okay.
What we're looking at right now, anywhere from $80 to $100 per table. We're going to get a carrier for them too, so we can load them and move them off when we have training. But I'm pretty comfortable with that number. But thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, any other discussion? So call for vote on the authorization to purchase the tables. All in favor? All right.
And
All
if anybody
opposed?
wants some old ones, let me know.
Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it, and the $3,000 for new tables. Also, under new business, it's traditional this time of year, we consider taking a summertime hiatus from the meetings. And we don't have any pending business before the CON committee that will draw us together necessarily on a schedule, excuse me, on a clock that's running out. So if someone wished to make a motion to dispense with the July and August meetings.
I'll make a motion.
Dave, seconded by Len. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. I think as was tradition last summer, the executive director will conduct any necessary short-term business by email and can always call a meeting as necessary. Is there any old business or other new business?
I just
Dr.
wanted to
Bailey.
actually pass along a little bit more clarification to Emery's comments. She just was extremely honored and pleased to have gotten a notification from the Director of the Bureau of EMS that she'd gotten the Registered Professional Nurse of the Year. And just was humbled that we would think to her in that way, and that would carry over to this day. And frankly, it's one more endorsement of being absolutely the right choice for that. And what I'd like to do, Steve, is we can consider passing that honor to her at our October meeting, which I believe is going to be the awards banquet in Saratoga.
October 16th.
Right? 16th?
I think it makes sense for us to recognize the statewide award as well as the regional award.
Yeah, I agree. And could we formally ask if the Director of the Bureau of EMS would be able to attend that?
I don't see why not. She attended last year, so she's close by. Okay, thank you for the suggestion. Did you didn't give us an update down here, I'm sorry, we're going out of order again, but you didn't give us an update on Anne Marie's favorite project? Did you want to on the PCR?
Emery's favorite project. The Nurse Committee's pet project, I think is what it is. Just that further work continues on getting face sheets from all of the hospitals auto-faxed or auto-emailed to each EMS agency. And one large hospital that I don't work for is much closer than they were several months ago. And it seems to be actively moving forward there. So for folks that may transport a lot of patients to that institution, with any luck, your face sheets are coming. So there certainly are folks from both your agency and some of my agencies that are working very closely with them to try to get that happen. So it's closer. Much to Emery's credit.
Thank you. All right, the last thing to mention is you've got a handout at your place about a company called Tag, a check that was left, while she was in the packet at the door. And there's a session here on July 19th, right?
Yes.
And when I learned about this, I don't know if every agency knows this, but there is a series of Medicare and Medicaid regulations that require us to be screening our vendors and our employees for sanctions from Medicare and Medicaid. And perhaps more agencies do. Some of the agencies do it on a more frequent basis than others. But if you have difficulty in doing it, it's burdensome. Remo is hosting this company that has a reliable way that you can do it more easily than you may be doing it now, at a low cost. So I just wanted to point that out to anybody who may be interested. Remo does receive a small benefit from each time one of our members contracts with this agency. However, I think that the benefit to the agency would be evident if you come to if you read about it and the protection it provides from potential sanctions if you don't do this checking.
Steve, the way it was explained to me basically is, especially or relative to an EMS agency, if you go out and you hire an employee, John Doe, who's been sanctioned or for some reason was in trouble somewhere else, comes under your employ, you put them out there in the field running calls, they take care of patient, they provide patient services, sign their name on the billing sheets. If that person or that employee has been sanctioned somewhere down the road and it becomes apparent to Medicare or Medicaid, that agency could be subject to a fine or a payback, whatever that person has billed for the time period they've worked for that agency. I was not aware of this. I thought this was a great idea just to throw out there. We're going to have an informational seminar July 16th, and I met with these people, and I actually negotiated a little bit for Remo. If anybody signs up, it's similar to the GPO arrangement. We get a percentage. But I thought it'd be something just to throw out there to the agencies that aren't aware of this. It's become apparent over the last month or so that vast majority of agencies aren't aware of this. To simplify it, sanction inclusion testing is basically a background check, though this agency uses about 5 or 6 different outlets to provide that. And what they'll do is they'll do that if you contract with them on a monthly basis. All you have to do is submit your employee roster to them every month. They will provide that sanction exclusion testing for a nominal fee each month so that you know you have clean employees. So once again, July 16th, if anybody's interested, it'll be here 6 p.m. Their representatives are going to give a brief presentation on it.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Any other items for the floor? Really?
I know it's my report. I actually have some good news that just came into me from our EMSC colleagues, which is that New York State just completed their National Pediatric Registry project, which is part of the EMSC program nationally. Our state score is much higher than the scores of other states, which is good to know. And we had almost a 90% compliance rate within our hospitals in the state. So just 2 good things. I'm sure we'll get further information on this from the state. I haven't reviewed it anymore. Just good news to close the meeting.
Thank you, Mike. Anything else?
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Meeting's adjourned. We'll see everybody.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we need a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? All right, we'll see everybody in September, if not sooner. Thank you.
I want to read.
When's the new parliamentarian?